Okay, so one of the cool things TinkerCAD does is give you these great names. Like this one is Frantic Jakes. I'm not sure. But all you have to do to change that is click on it. And so I could say Monday morning demo instead, and just click enter. Okay. So you don't have to stick with the very silly names that they come up with. They're really easy to change. Another really helpful thing to know how to do is change your grid setting. So right down here, you can click Edit Grid. By default, it's in millimeters. If you would prefer to think in inches, you can change it right there. But one of the nice things to be able to do is to change this so that it matches your 3D printer. So in our Canvas course, there are listings for some of the dimensions that our 3D printers can print in. This is the maximum for the FlashForge Creator Pro, which is what I would like you guys to be designing for, because they're the ones that I have on my dining room table waiting for you. So they are 225 millimeters by 145 millimeters. So now if I hit Update Grid, now I know that anything I build that fits inside this work plane will fit on the printer. Okay, which is really handy. Now I'd like you to think about not going right up to the edge. It's better to not push it all the way to the limit if you don't have to. Okay, so another cool thing to know how to do is change some of your snap grid settings. I'm just gonna make kind of a box here for us to work with. And I'm gonna pull out the ruler, just like I did last time. You can put this anywhere. I like putting mine in the corner because it lets me know how far from the corner I am, which I think is a kind of helpful frame of reference. So one of the things that I want you to be able to see is that if I now click and drag this box around, it looks like it's moving pretty smoothly, but secretly it is kind of jumping. So I want to see if you can see that, maybe if I zoom in a little bit. Ah! Oh no, I clicked the wrong button. It happens. All right, back into Tinker This. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to click on this box and I'm going to, I'm going to drag it around. So can you see, hopefully, that it is jumping from one square to the next? Right down here, right? So I'm kind of at the end of that second square, boom, over to the third, boom, over to the fourth. And you can see that in the measurements that are happening down here too. This is 66 millimeters from the corner, 69, 70, 71, 72. Okay, so it's technically jumping from spot to spot. And if that is not something that works for you, or sometimes you want it and sometimes you don't, here's how you change that. If you go down to Snap Grid, if we turn it up to 2 millimeters, now I will make bigger jumps. You can kind of see them even better. 82, 84, 86, 88, 90. On the other hand, perhaps those jumps are getting in the way of you really lining something up the way you want to. So if you go down here, you can turn it all the way to off, or you could just scale it down a little bit. Maybe I'll go every 25 millimeters instead. So now I'm jumping, but I'm jumping by much smaller increments. And sometimes that'll let you position things a little more accurately or closer to what you actually want. You can also click on the measurements down here and type in exactly where you want something to be, which is also very handy. 50. There we go. Okay, but for the most part, I actually think 1 millimeter is a great place to be in that snap grid. So when I'm done, I usually change it back. All right, let's see how we're doing. So far I've made a really boring box. That's not terribly exciting. let's think about what we're going to make today, because it's really hard to demo things well if I'm not making something. Otherwise, I'm just kind of clicking on things. That's not very interesting to watch. I wouldn't want to watch that. Let's see, what are we going to make? We'll make a cookie cutter, because that's actually really fun, and is a way to think about a lot of different things going on in your 3D design. So what am I going to make a cookie cutter of? Looking around my room for inspiration. I will make a cookie cutter of, a car. Okay, we're going to make a car cookie cutter today. So the first thing I want to do is I want to think about what is the shape of a car that I want to go with. I'm not going to actually use this scribble interface, but I do just want to be able to kind of draw what I'm thinking about real quick. So let's see, maybe my car kind of goes up and then down, and then it's got like a front, right? And oh, look, looks like I'm making some sort of hatchback. Okay, and it will need tires. That's good. And maybe if I'm feeling really fancy, I will manage to add a window. We'll see about that one. Okay, clearly this is not the artistic masterpiece. So that's my rough sketch of a car. Now I'm gonna try and make a cookie cutter version. All right, so we are going, let's see, what's the basic kind of shapes that I'm going for here? It looks like I've got kind of a base like that. Maybe I'm gonna make this 15 millimeters, and then it looks like I've got kind of a rounded shape at the front. Okay, so I'm gonna make that out of this cylinder. But that looks a little too rounded. How about that? Okay, that's not bad so far. Okay, so I'm gonna group those together because I like that for kind of the bottom of my car shape. Let's see, I'm gonna need tires. That definitely looks too big. That's not bad. So I'm gonna want to use the exact same thing twice, right? So here I can use my keyboard and Control-C, Control-V to copy. Or if I click on it, I could come up here and it says duplicate. Okay, so now I have another one and it drops it exactly on top of the one I already had. That'll work. You can also use copy and then paste if you want to be able to put them in slightly different spots. All right, so now I see tires on my car. That's good, but I had kind of a swoop up and a swoop down. So let's see how I'm going to make this swoop. Okay, this is good. I like this rounded roof shape, but it is on its side, and that is not what I want. I need it kind of facing up so that I can get this swoop at the top of the roof. So I need to rotate it. And if I look from the side, when I'm clicked on this shape and I'm highlighted it, you can see these arrows. You see those arrows? Okay, so if I kind of hover over it, this little degree markings appears, and then if I hold my left mouse button down and drag, it will rotate. If I drag inside the circle, it jumps by 22.5 degrees. If I go on the outside of the circle, I get a lot more control, but it's a little harder to be precise. Okay, but that is not at all the angle I was going for, so I'm going to come up here and hit undo. Okay, this is the angle I actually wanted to rotate on, and I'm going to use those snaps because I want to go right to 90 degrees. All right, so I actually like those tire shapes, so I'm going to go ahead and select all of these. So I did that by drawing a box around them. You can also do it by click and then hold down Shift on your keyboard and click and click. Now that I've got all three selected, I'm going to group. This is very undoable, right? All I have to do is hit ungroup and they'll come back apart. But it does make it a little easier for me to just move them around all together when they're grouped like that. Okay, so I like, oops, I like this shape for the top of my car, but it's definitely the wrong size. So let's see what we can do about that. Ooh, looks a little like a bubble car, a Jetsons car right now. You guys probably don't know who the Jetsons are. It's all right. So that's pretty good. I kind of like that as a shape, except I don't really like these sharp transitions here. So I'm gonna have to figure out what to do about that. Okay, so, but I do like this and this together. So I'm gonna go ahead and group those. See how we're doing. What? They ended up on different sides. Oh, goodness. All right, let's try and fix that. So here, you can see that I seem to have accidentally dropped my half cylinder below the plane. This blue thing, this workplace is the plane. And you can see this measurement in green down here showing that the bottom is actually -5 millimeters compared to the plane. So if I just click here and change this to 0, now it'll be nice and flat and even with that one again. Whoops. Okay, so click, hold down Shift, click the other one, group. That looks better, much better. Okay, so the next thing I really want to do is I want to create this kind of gentle slope that is going to go right here, but there is no shape to do that with here in the ready-made shapes. So we're going to learn how to kind of make your own shape using the hole tool. So here's what I want to do. I'm going to start with a box and I'm going to take the cylinder like so. I'm actually going to make the cylinder quite a bit bigger because I want to kind of connect the two corners of my box to get that swoopy shape, right? All right, and that is looking pretty good. So this cylinder I brought out is a hole. I brought out one that was already a hole, but if you didn't have that one, maybe you started with an orange one, all you do is click on the Change to Hole button right here, or the letter H, and it becomes a hole. So now, when I group these two shapes, that cylinder cuts out of the box, and that is almost perfect, but it looks like we ended up with kind of a lip on that spot, and I don't really like that. So I'm going to try that again. That's better. Okay, so now I have this helpful swoopy shape. It's already the same height as my car. And if I bring it in, first I'm gonna copy and paste one of these because I know I'm gonna want one for the other side and I'm about to change up the shape of this one. So I'm gonna try bringing it in like this. And it's not terrible, but it's not great either. Let's see what else. Well, I kind of like that little bit right there. Okay, so maybe I want to keep this part, but I don't want this part. So what am I gonna do next? I'm gonna take this shape and try and cut off that top that I don't want. So I'm gonna bring out another hole. I'm only gonna let this hole interact with this swoopy part. So now I have cut the top off of it and got just the swoop for the front of my car. So let's see how that looks when we group these together. Hey, that looks pretty good. I like it. Okay, I'm gonna do kind of the same thing with this one on the back bumper, but it is facing the wrong way right now, so I also need to rotate. So if I hover over, you can see the rotate symbol shows right there. I'm gonna stay inside the circle because I wanna go a true 90 degrees. And then I can come over, get this kind of in position, and I will, sorry guys, I'm using a new mouse and its center click button is a little testy. Okay, let's try that again. There we go. Okay, so maybe I go smaller with this one. Or a little more leaning. Oh, I kind of like that. Yeah, I like that quite a bit. Okay, I want this to go in a tiny bit more so it kind of lines. Oh, see, this is I'm snapping too much, so I'm going to turn down the snap to maybe 25. Because I want it to line up a little better on this side. That's better. And once again, I do not want this back part. So I'm gonna bring out a hole to cut that off, but I wanna make sure it's like right flat with this bumper I've got going. So I'm gonna pull out a work plane and put it on this surface, which looks really strange. So you can see now my car is kind of hovering in the middle of nowhere. But if we now bring out a shape, it'll automatically be flat on that orange work surface. So right flat on that bumper. Okay, and I want to join it with this red swoopy piece so that it cuts off that back part. Ah! There was a part sticking out the bottom. Whoops, I'm just gonna make my box bigger. So it includes that part. And now if I join these together, good. And now I find that big orange vertical plane very distracting. So I'm gonna pull out a work plane. There we go. All right, let's take a look. I'm gonna join these two together. All right, my car is looking kind of cute. I like it, but maybe I want this to be a little rounded. Like I like the rounded front. Maybe I want a little bit of rounding on the back. Decided cylinder is not the way to go. I'm gonna try that round roof again and rotate it 90 degrees this way. And 90 degrees, hopefully, there we go, this way. And then bring it to the bumper, try and get those nice and lined up and much shorter. Okay. So right now it is below the plane, which is not what I want. So we saw before I could type 0 on here and that would fix it. But if you hover over this black pyramid shape and pull that up, that also works. to get things up and down. Okay. Looks like it's not quite the right size yet. Oh, and there's a gap. All right. There's the gap gone. That looks better. And that almost looks better. I think maybe the 25 is still a little too much. We're gonna try a 0.1 millimeter. Here we go. Oh, right. Let's take a look at our car. It's called Roofed Up. Come on, you can do it. There we go. Okay, that's not a terrible car shape. I kind of like that. Very cute. All right, now it is not looking very much like a cookie cutter. Right now it's just kind of a block. If we were to print this out, it would look nice from this side, but it wouldn't look terribly car-like from this side at all. So it's not a very good 3D structure. It's definitely not a cookie cutter right now. It would be more of an imprint or a stamp, which is not what we're going for. So how do we turn it into a cookie cutter? So what we really need is we need to be able to cut this as an edge. So I'm going to show you two ways to do that. One is a really quick one. We're just going to duplicate this, and I'm going to hold down Shift and shrink it a tiny bit. And then make it taller so that we can see where it is in relation, make it into a hole. All right, so maybe I didn't go quite small enough. Let's try that again. Shift. Okay, so it is starting to get smaller. You can see this kind of outline out here, but it's not lined up well. So I'm going to choose both of these and then use the Align tool. And this will let me help them, let me get them lined up so that their middles exactly match. So if I go like this, their middles match that way, and this, their middles match that way. Okay, so now you can see that there is an edge sticking out almost everywhere. Looks pretty good. Oh, starts to go a little wrong over here, a little thin, and the tires are unhappy. Shrinking it has caused the tires to kind of cut through. So I'm just going to show you what this would look like and then why I probably wouldn't do it this way. So if I were to group these now, oops, not that one, just you guys, I would have most of a pretty good cutout, except for these missing pieces right here. Now I could go and try and fill those in with some other shape, but that's probably unnecessarily frustrating. So if I hit undo, this is what people usually do, is trying to shrink the whole shape. And if you have a complex shape, it just doesn't work out very well. Instead, what you really need to do is you need to shrink each individual shape. So I'm going to cut all of these back apart so that we can see where they all came from. And some I really do want to keep grouped and cut. Like this little swoopy part needs the cut off from here and here. And this swoopy part needs the cut off here and here. Okay, but here are the shapes that our car is actually made of. So what I need to do now is for each one of these shapes, I need to duplicate it. I'm going to turn my snap back up because 1 millimeter is a pretty good jumping point for this. Hold down Shift so that it moves both at the same time, and I'm going to go in 2 millimeters. Now the problem is that also made it shorter, so now I can't even see it. So I'm also going to hit this top one and make it taller. This is what I want aligned with the tire I just made it from. And this is the one I want to be a hole. Okay, I'm going to repeat that process for every single shape. So I'm going to duplicate, hold down Shift, shrink by 2, make it taller, make it a hole, align it with the shape that I started with, and that one looks good. Duplicate, shrink by 2, make it taller, make it a hole, align this way, align this way. Okay, so you can see what I'm doing here. And the reason that it's important to do it this way instead of the other way is that this way I am shrinking every wall correctly instead of just kind of hoping that they all stay in the right spot as I shrink them all together, which we saw didn't work. So it's really common to try that the first time and then realize that something has gone wrong and it's not going to work. As it is, even this is not a perfect system because you're going to have some walls get thinner and thicker than others. This rectangle is a good example. You can see this wall ended up pretty thick and this one ended up pretty thin. So I might still have to go back and change some of that later on. And for this one, I'm actually going to duplicate it. I'm not going to shrink it. I am going to make it taller and a hole, but instead of shrinking it, I'm just going to move it. So one this way and one this way. That was too much. That's better. So I will go do the other swoop the same way. Duplicate, make it taller, make it a hole, one this way, that way. It's looking pretty good. I think this rectangle, I think, is making the bottom too thin. So I'm gonna go up a little bit. Except now that's gonna make that too non-existent. There we go. Okay, back to duplicating. So I'm going to change my snapback. The reason I chose to snap twice is because 1 millimeter is an acceptable wall thickness I have going on over here. I wouldn't want to go too thin, and I wouldn't want to go really, really thick. Because if you go really, really thick with a cookie cutter, you don't really end up with cut cookies. You end up with squished cookie dough. That's no good. All right, we're getting there. And what am I missing? The back bumper. Duplicate. Make taller. Make a hole. Oh, I forgot to shrink. Let's see how we're doing. That looks okay. So it's not meeting the inside one right now. So I'm going to try making it a little bigger that way. Nope, I didn't like how that changed at all. I will try making this one bigger. a little better, I think. Nope, I don't like that. Okay, so next we're gonna see what spots we've missed. So I'm gonna select all of this and join. Aha, okay. So there's this extra piece in the middle. There's these extra pieces on the side. And looks like maybe one over there. Just kind of a lip. So I would now go back one step and either try and extend these or maybe add in another piece there. I could try and clean up this transition a little bit before I make the holes grouped. Can certainly do that. This is going to be kind of more case by case. This video is already longer than any of you wanted to watch, so I'm going to end here. I'm going to go ahead and group these again so you can see what I would do next. Right now, this is really tall for a cookie cutter, so I would just bring the whole thing down. Maybe like 1 centimeter is pretty good. And the thing that's missing right now is this would be very, very fragile. So it would need some sort of either top bar to hold and give some stability, maybe a cross piece or two to help it all stay in a line. And maybe I'll try and add that for next class. But this is kind of a start to finish example of a project, or start to 90% finished example of a project in TinkerCAD. You got to see a lot of the tools. So the duplicate, the align is really good. The grouping and ungrouping to move things around. A lot of the perspectives, some of the shapes, the work plane, the ruler, using the snaps, editing the grid. All of these things are going to make your projects much easier to get done.